Hey marketers of the world, Chloe here, and today we're talking Google AMP. Google AMP is a fairly new product that both developers and marketers are looking into, kind of playing around with. In order for marketers to really take a look at understanding it and figuring out if it's right for your brand and your content, I'm going to help you walk through that process. So what exactly is Google AMP? Google AMP stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages. This is actually a developer project, not a marketing specific product. So here's the technical definition. It's a free open source framework that developers are able to use to be able to essentially build pages that serve content quicker. Sounds great, right? Well, here's a little bit of a catch to it. It means that content is actually essentially cached on Google servers and served from Google servers. You may have seen Google AMP pages already in mobile searches on your phone and not even noticed it. They come up first in the search, generally speaking, and are pretty quick to spot, but they do look different from an actual mobile version of the page. That's because AMP actually strips out anything that bottlenecks that page load time, meaning that content is served blazing fast, but also meaning that content is, generally speaking, the only thing that's served on a page. So that means the content that's actually served comes up blazing fast. If you click on a Google AMP result, you'll notice that it loads in essentially milliseconds, which is great for consumers because we love really quick page load times. However, there's a couple catches that we should know about before actually diving in and jumping on board with Google AMP. The first thing is that Google AMP isn't currently dynamic, which if you're a marketer using any kind of personalization or dynamic pages, there are some alarm bells going off right now. It means that if you were to use Google AMP in your marketing strategy, that you're extremely limited in the content that you can serve and how that's displayed to different target markets or segments of your audience. If that's a really huge part of your marketing strategy, it's really problematic to invest in Google AMP and actually asking your developers to work in this kind of framework. You're not going to be capturing personalized data. And on top of that, we know, statistically speaking, that dynamic content actually converts better than static content. So even though page load times are faster, which means that consumers may be happier, it may not be as relevant as we want it to be because we're trying to personalize things to our target markets, which means maybe that actually does hurt conversion in the end. It's up in the air and it depends on the organization, but it's up to you to decide. As mentioned before, AMP page load times are ridiculously blazing fast, and there's almost a such thing as too fast. Specifically, if you're a publisher or have a content site that serves up ads, note that sometimes those page load times are so fast that the ads load secondary, meaning that you're losing some money, because if somebody's spending 30 seconds reading your article on an AMP page, but your ad is only loaded for 10, you're losing 20 seconds of potential revenue time to not only be incurring an impression, but also a potential conversion. In some cases, the user experience is almost too good, meaning that the ads are essentially not even viewable. People read the content really quickly, consume it, and move on before an ad is even displayed, which is problematic if that's a huge source of revenue for your team. Here's my third point. I'm sure as marketers we all know this, but I'm going to review it very quickly. Google search basically works like this. It indexes a lot of content on a lot of websites. Maybe not all of them, but we'll just say all for simplicity's sake. All of this content from all of these websites, but also how these websites relate to one another, meaning that the more content that's actually referenced on other websites means that the more authoritative that website is. If you're generating AMP pages that are actually cached pages serving from Google servers, you're not actually getting that credit, which is a real bummer. If this were to be widely adopted, that means that essentially people can Google search something, read an article really quick, and leave, which means they never actually left Google. They never actually visited your site. That can be so problematic in so many ways I can't even begin to fathom. Lastly, if you thumb through forums such as Reddit or developer forums, Google AMP forums even, the developer community is actually very split on AMP pages as well. Developers are actually shackled in a lot of ways. They don't have control over the security of that page because it's not on their website. They may not be able to update content in a certain protocol or a certain way because they have to follow this framework. And who knows when it's going to get recached again by Google. There can also be issues with bookmarking, sharing, you name it. There's a lot of different things that are tossed around in these forums. A lot of this can be attributed to the fact that AMP is just new. Maybe developers are having pushback on it because there's still a lot of learning to do and a lot of things to be defined by the project. What we're trying to figure out is if AMP is right for marketers. And to be honest, I'm pretty inconclusive on it. I've kind of laid out the cons because there are a lot of pros you can find on the internet, mostly calculating up to it's way faster experience, which is better for consumers. It's always important to have a healthy skepticism about adopting a new technology. Google AMP is one of those. It is still fairly new. So what's most important is always to take a step back, take a look at your marketing strategy in one hand, take a look at the pros and cons of Google AMP in the other, and weigh the two and see if they correlate and fit. If it's part of your marketing strategy to really increase the speed and performance of those pages, and Google AMP is a quick, great way to do that for your consumers, then by all means, take a serious look at implementing it in your team. But if personalization, on the other hand, is a huge strategy, or AdSense, or serving ads or anything like that is another huge part of your strategy, it can be really problematic to be adopting something like this that can really be a detriment to a huge part of your marketing strategy. As always, trying to make you smarter marketers. I'm Chloe, and I'll see you next time.